Now, last but definitely not least, I'd like to share our fourth study for today. And that study is focusing on gesture. This is an exciting example of something that we've observed in society, where we've been able to bring our research questions to BL2 to try and find the answers for things that we've questioned in our society. This is also a great study because it is a study that is collaborative with Dr. Ben Bain and his team's Gesture Literacy Lab. It was born on the cusp of COVID-19. This study is actually split into two parts. The first we'll talk about today, which is talking about the new approach of using webcams to do online remote eye tracking. And the second is using thermal IR imaging. I have two students here, two BL2 research assistants who will help us to present this team presentation, Grady and Charles.
Hi, thank you, Dr. White. I'm Grady Gallagher. I'm a BL2 graduate student here at Gallaudet University. And so, as we know, gestures are everywhere. Gestures allow us to communicate feelings, thoughts, factual information. It's almost like a universal language. We use gestures every day, sometimes without even realizing it. We might point to something you want in a bakery case, or that's a gesture. Or you might wave to your friend that you see across the way. That's also a gesture. But have you noticed that sometimes some people are better at understanding gestures than others? So we might notice in places like the signing Starbucks or in Mazzeria, where people freeze when asked to watch or produce gesture. Petito also observed this at our Gallaudet Board of Trustees meeting. We had a mix of people who were deaf and hearing at various ages, and when asked to copy gestures, many were hesitant and didn't even participate. So, of course, for Dr. Petito, being the scientist that she is, was very curious about why this was the case, and devised a exciting collaborative study with Dr. Ben Bain to study this phenomenon. So we created a knowledge studio for Gallaudet in a very creative way. We realized that when in a safe space and presented the opportunity to learn, some people still refused. And that led us to our research question. Next slide, please. And this is, why are some people better with gesture than others? Why are some people more willing or inclined to engage with other people using gesture and other people are not? Does visual attention and emotional regulation play a role here? And so this study tests these three hypotheses. And before I proceed with the hypotheses, I just want to touch on what the difference is between ASL and gesture, because it's a very key point. Can we just play this video, please? So as we saw three very fluid signs, but with gesture, there were 5 distinct movements or gestures. That's 5-second longs. Both express the same information, but you'll note the difference between the two modes of expression. So our hypothesis is wanting to know what would prevent people from actually engaging in gesture. Is it a cognitive process? That some gestures are more difficult to use and understand than others? Some have a direct semantic mapping, some are easier, for example, like drink, which is very obvious, and others can be more abstract. the gesture for shame on you, which requires a little bit more thought to fully unpack and understand, and that might cause or result in hesitation. There's also the motor theory hypothesis that expressive abilities rely on greater receptive understanding of gestures or a cognitive embodiment of kinesthetic proprioceptive motor movements to be able to use gesture. So that's the motor theory hypothesis. And then the visual language experience hypothesis is that those who have experience with a visual language modality have better visual semantic or visual spatial and visual attention skills to be able to decode gestures and apply those abilities to communicating with gesture. So over to Charles Harris to describe the design of the experiment.
Hello, everybody. I am Charles Harris, and I am an undergraduate research assistant working for BL2. I want to talk about our experimental design. As was mentioned, our design uniquely tests 3 hypotheses. Our design includes a couple of things. We look at expressive and receptive conditions, looking at what's tangible, intangible, and neutral gestures. I want to talk about what each of those are. Tangible gestures are things or objects that are quote unquote verbable with a more semantic relationship in ASL that have a clear, overt meaning. Intangible gestures are more abstract thoughts or concepts that have a less clear semantic relationship with ASL. Neutral gestures are shapes, lines, outlines of things with minimal to no semantic meaning. They're considered neutral in comparison to ASL. So I'll let you watch this on the screen to get some examples. As you can see on the screen here, we have 2 different studies that we're doing. One is remote, so that's an online study, and the other is in person. We have roughly 30 participants split into 2 groups of 15. 15 of them are hearing people who sign, and the other 15 are hearing people who do not. The metrics we're using are through LabVanced, which is an online research platform. And it's looking at knowledge and sustained visual attention in expression of a person, be that through verbal language, typed, or signed. Our second study, which is in person, has thermal IR imaging and facial soft tissue tracking. We can tell if the nose looks more blue, that means the nose is colder. If the nose is more red, it's warmer, it means the person is more anxious. So we're able to recognize the difference in how these emotions correlate with the autonomic nervous system. And when we get these results in the future, we'll be able to share them. So we want to identify factors in how this can translate to optimal gesture learning. We want to see how people can best learn gestures, engage with gestures, and use visual language. Our hope is that our findings will help people in developing their use of gestures in the future, be more comfortable gesturing, using gesture to learn, communicate visually, and eventually creating different types of gesture products or analyses that people can use and just simply have a better understanding of how gestures work. This could be meaningful to people around the world. Gestures are a very important part of communication, and without them, we wouldn't really have the full use of language that we do. Thank you, Grady. Thank you, Charles.
Excited to see what happens. Yes, we're collecting the data now. We hope to have more information by the Blitz, and we also have a few samples also in Kellogg. So go check it out.
Definitely. Thank you.